as if the gun is loaded. In the second Vancouver debate between Jordan B. Peterson and Sam Harris, moderated by Bret Weinstein, they brought up the as if the gun is loaded rule of action. I think there is several deep truths to be extracted from this example about how we as humans has evolved two systems of augmentation of reality with truth. That emotions are truth about what we value and thus how we should act. And that facts are truth about the state and thus what action is possible. And that we in fact are much more reliable to act in faith to values than we act in faith to state. Let's listen to Sam Harris explaining why he understands and accepts the importance of always acting as if the gun is loaded. And then I come back and tries to delve even deeper than Bret Weinstein's concept of metaphorical truth.
The idea that anyone who's worked with guns at all must have heard this admonishment to treat every gun as if it is loaded, right? And you actually, last night when I alleged that you believed in God, you corrected me. You said, no, you live as if God exists, right? And so this seems like there's a connection here. So if I had a gun here that I wanted to show Bret, if I know anything about guns, I'm going to make damn sure that it's unloaded, right? I'm going to pull back the slide, I'm going to drop the magazine, pull back the slide, check the chamber, and do this in a redundant fashion that really looks like I'm suffering from obsessive compulsive disorder. I mean, it is truly redundant. And then I'll hand it to Bret, and if Bret knows anything about guns, he will do the same thing having just seen me do it. And if he hands it back to me, again, I will do the same thing, even though there may be no ammunition around, right? So it really is crazy at the level of our explicit knowledge of the situation, and yet absolutely necessary to do. And it's not merely, it runs very deep. I mean, that whole time you're careful not to point the barrel of the gun at anything you would be afraid to shoot. And when people fail to live this way around guns, they, with some unnerving frequency, actually shoot themselves or people close to them by accident. So it is really the only proper hedge against just the odds of being in proximity to loaded weapons.
As if the gun is loaded. Could the reason we should act in the presence of guns as if the gun is loaded be that we can't fully trust our rational representation of reality? That if we trust that we have really checked that the gun is now safe, that we can now represent the gun as being in a safe state, then we will eventually get the state of the gun wrong, and someone will get shot by mistake. So the reason we should act as if the gun is loaded is something we have found out based on the mishaps that has occurred when we do not. And the only way to minimize such mishaps with guns is to simply always assume they are loaded and should be treated as loaded. There seems to be an important and deep truth here about how reliable our human representation of the world actually is. Or rather, to what degree we can act in faith to our conscious representation of the world. Also, the always act as if the gun is loaded rule holds within it a reference to how we should feel around guns. That we should work up a very specific set of feelings when we are around guns. Feelings of respect, feelings of fear, feelings of alertness and feeling of urge to really pay attention to what happens with the gun. Could it be that the truth about how to act in the presence of guns is to not trust our conscious representation of the gun state, but instead try very hard to engage the correct emotions around guns, and trust these emotions to tell us how to act? And that acting in faith to these emotions is better than acting in faith to our ability to get the facts about the gun correct. I think there is more to this story than just the discussion about metaphorical truth versus factual truth. Here seems to be a rational reason to pay attention to, let's call it emotional truth. That the truth about how we should act has evolved and been encoded into our behavior in the form of emotions. That our ability to act in faith to rational facts are in many cases of less reliability than our ability to act in faith to emotions. Now, I don't think this means that our emotions are to be trusted more than rational facts. But it is a case for the fact that through evolution, our ability to act in faith to emotions is much more reliable than our ability to act in faith to consciously derived facts. Basically, the act as if the gun is loaded rule is about values versus facts. Evolution has equipped us with a truth about how to act, and these truths are represented to us in the form of emotions. And emotions augments reality with values. Only later in our evolution have we added a layer of a conscious representation of the world, a representation that augments reality with facts. Thus, I think we can argue that our factual representation about the state of reality is an augmentation of the older and more powerful emotional augmentation about how we should interact with reality. The things we value tells us how we should act, while the facts about reality tell us what is possible.
If you like my videos, feel free to do nothing.
Just grab a cup of coffee
and enjoy.